They stood there for a long moment, their swords forgotten, their faces turned toward the forest where Nora had vanished. A deep, heavy silence settled over the village as they realized what they had lost. They hadn't just lost a healer. They had lost someone they had come to care for deeply. But just as the weight of their grief began to sink in, a shout broke the silence. "She's coming back!" one of the warriors yelled, his voice filled with disbelief. Heads turned, and there, emerging from the forest, was Nora. Her face was determined, her hands filled with plants and herbs. She was running toward them, her eyes locked on Torak. The crowd parted as she made her way through, their hearts racing in their chests. What was she doing? Without a word, Nora knelt beside Torak, quickly and expertly applying the plants to his wound. Her hands moved with the precision of a healer, her face calm and focused. The tribe watched in stunned silence, their emotions raw and conflicted. Tears filled the eyes of some of the warriors as they realized what was happening. She had come back. She had chosen to help them, even after everything that had happened. The emotions in the air were palpable: relief, joy, sorrow, and something else, something deeper. "She came back," someone whispered, their voice thick with emotion. Another warrior wiped a tear from his eye, his voice breaking as he spoke. "She saved him. Again." As Nora finished applying the medicine, the crowd erupted into cheers, their voices filled with a strange mix of joy and sorrow. They had nearly lost her, but now she was here, tending to their hero once again. The tension that had filled the village moments ago was replaced by a deep, overwhelming sense of gratitude. Torak looked at Nora, his heart filled with a mixture of emotions he couldn't quite name. "Why did you come back?" he asked softly, his voice barely audible over the cheers of the crowd. Nora looked up at him, her eyes filled with tears. "Because I couldn't let you die," she whispered, her voice shaking. The crowd around them roared with joy, their cheers echoing into the night. The Durumbar had never experienced anything like this before. Love, compassion, forgiveness. For the first time in their history, they had spared a traitor, and for the first time, they felt something other than the cold sting of battle. They felt hope, and it was all because of Nora. Nora stood outside her tent, feeling the morning breeze against her face. The tribe was awake, going about their daily tasks, but something had changed. The way they looked at her was different. No more wariness, no more suspicion. There were nods of acknowledgement, subtle glances of acceptance. They knew she could leave if she wanted to, but she stayed. One of the warriors passed by, offering her some dried meat without saying a word. She took it, a silent exchange that carried meaning. She nodded in return, her thoughts still tangled, but she knew something had shifted between her and the tribe. Later that day, Tarak approached her, his usual stoic expression softened. "Come," he said, holding up a dagger. "You need to learn this." Nora hesitated, her stomach churning with embarrassment. She remembered how she had thrown a dagger at him the day before, aiming to kill him. "Why?" she asked, unsure of his intentions. Tarak's eyes remained calm. "For your own safety. Next time you'll need to know how to throw it properly." She glanced at the dagger in his hand, then back at him. "You want to teach me?" He nodded. "Yes. Come." They walked to a secluded spot near the edge of the forest, where targets were set up, crude but effective. Tarak handed her the dagger, his fingers briefly brushing hers. "Hold it like this," he said, positioning her hand carefully. "Not too tight. You need control, not just strength." Nora mimicked his grip, feeling the weight of the blade. It felt strange in her hand, awkward. Like this? Tarek stepped behind her, adjusting her stance. Loosen your shoulders. Use your whole arm when you throw, not just your wrist. She nodded, focusing. She threw the dagger, but it spun out of control and missed the target. Her frustration grew. Again, Tarek said, his voice steady. You'll learn. Nora gritted her teeth and tried again. This time, the dagger hit the target, though far from the center. Tarek stood by her, watching. After a pause, he spoke. Why did you try to kill me yesterday? Nora stiffened, her grip tightening on the blade. She looked down, her voice low. Because you killed my parents. Tarek remained quiet for a moment, then sighed. It was war, he said, his tone calm but heavy. We were all enemies then. We fought because we had no choice. Nora looked at him, anger and sorrow in her eyes. That's your excuse? It's not an excuse, Tarek said, his voice firm but understanding. It's the truth. War has rules, but they're not the rules of peace. My people taught me that. The old ones, they passed down stories, lessons from their lives. We didn't fight because we wanted to. We fought to survive. Nora's heart tightened, but she couldn't argue with his words. She had seen enough of war to know that survival often blurred the lines between right and wrong. Tarek's eyes softened as he continued. I'm sorry for what happened, but know this. It wasn't personal. It never is. Nora stood in silence, her mind swirling with emotions. She hadn't expected this kind of honesty from him. It was as if, for the first time, she saw him not as the enemy, but as someone caught in the same chaos she had been. After a long pause, Tarek broke the silence. Now, let's focus. He moved back, gesturing to the target. When you throw, aim with your eyes first. Let your arm follow. Nora took a deep breath, her focus shifting to the task at hand. She threw the dagger again, and this time, it stuck closer to the center. Tarek nodded approvingly. You're learning. They continued practicing, the air between them no longer heavy with tension, but something else, something quieter, more understanding. They didn't speak much, but they didn't need to. The silent exchange between them carried more weight than words ever could.